They call it Leavenworth, a name that echoes through the dark corners of America's prison history. Built in 1903, it stands like a monument to punishment and power. Massive stone walls stretch across the Kansas horizon, holding more than just men. They hold memories, mistakes, and secrets buried beneath a century of steel and silence. Inside these walls, time moves differently. Every sound, the slam of a gate, the shuffle of boots, the clank of keys, becomes part of a rhythm that defines life behind bars. Leavenworth wasn't built to rehabilitate. It was built to contain, to remind every inmate that freedom was something they used to have. The story you're about to hear isn't about fame or redemption. It's about survival, in a place where even the air feels heavy with history. Before Leavenworth became a home for America's most dangerous men, it was built by the hands of prisoners themselves. Federal inmates, transported by train from military prisons, laid each stone of the fortress that would soon become their own cage. Imagine it, the Kansas sun beating down, men in shackles, breaking rock under the watchful eyes of armed guards. Every block of limestone they set in place sealed their own fate a little tighter. The prison's design mirrored ancient fortresses, 40-foot walls, 12 watchtowers, and a layout meant to control, not comfort. By 1906, it was already overflowing. But the government kept sending more. Among those first waves of inmates were bank robbers, killers, and gang members from the early 1900s underworld. They brought with them stories of shootouts, betrayals, and crimes that had shocked small-town America. And inside these walls, they met something even more ruthless, the system itself. Leavenworth became the ultimate stage for crime's most infamous names. It wasn't just a prison. It was a collection of America's most dangerous minds locked in one place. Al Capone passed through here before he made it to Alcatraz. George Machine Gun Kelly, the man who invented the term G-Man, called this place home. So did Carl Panzram, one of the most feared serial killers in US history, who once said, "I hate the whole human race." Each inmate brought their own kind of chaos. But Leavenworth didn't bend for anyone. Its walls didn't care about power or fame. It broke men the same way, quietly, systematically. Guards ruled with cold precision. Punishments were swift. Solitary confinement, known simply as the hole, was a place where voices went to die. The prison became a machine, and every man inside was just another cog, turning endlessly within it. Once inside Leavenworth, you learned the rules fast. Not the ones written on paper, but the ones carved into the code of survival. Don't talk unless spoken to. Don't stare too long. Never owe anyone a favor you can't repay. Prison life here wasn't about violence every day. It was about control, who had it and who didn't. The strong ran the cellblocks. The weak learned fast or disappeared. Inmates formed cliques by race, by loyalty, by fear. And every one of them knew the guards weren't the only ones watching. The dining hall, the showers, the yard, all had their own dangers. A smile could mean friendship, or a setup. Trust could cost you your life. Leavenworth taught men how to read faces, how to sense danger in silence, how to live inside chaos without losing their minds. And for some, that was the hardest sentence of all. They say the yard was the only place men could breathe, but it is also where Leavenworth wrote some of its bloodiest stories. Fights didn't happen in whispers here. They exploded, fast, brutal, and without warning. One of the most infamous moments came in the 1920s. Rival gangs from Chicago and St. Louis clashed in the yard over territory and smuggling rights. By the time guards regained control, 2 men were dead, and a dozen were bleeding on the ground. The blood was hosed off the concrete by evening. By morning, breakfast was served like nothing happened. That's how Leavenworth worked. Violence was just another part of the schedule. Some men came in as gangsters and left as ghosts. Others came in lost, and never left at all. Leavenworth didn't need to kill you to destroy you. It just needed time. Every man who's ever been caged has thought about escape. And at Leavenworth, a few actually tried. In 1931, a group of inmates plotted one of the boldest breakouts in US prison history. They spent months digging through the basement of a workshop, inch by inch, hiding dirt in their clothes and scattering it across the yard. The day came. They ran for the outer wall. Alarms blared. Towers lit up. Gunfire shattered the air. None made it past the second fence. The tunnel was sealed. The ringleader was sent to solitary, a cell so dark he didn't see sunlight for months. Leavenworth learned that hope could be dangerous. And from that day, every inch of the prison was reinforced, patrolled, and watched, because freedom here was just an illusion. In the heart of America, there's a place where time doesn't heal, it suffocates. Welcome to Leavenworth. Here, time isn't measured by clocks, but by routine. Wake up, count, eat, work, lockdown, repeat. Days melt into months, and months into years, until a man forgets what freedom even feels like. Even the sound of rain, something so normal, becomes a foreign language when you haven't felt it on your skin for a decade. Inside these walls, everything becomes a ritual. Folding the same sheets, walking the same corridors. It's not about living anymore, it's about enduring. As one former inmate put it, you stop counting the days because that's how the days stop killing you. That's the crushing truth of Leavenworth. Time doesn't just pass, it presses down on you. The walls close in, not with force, but with a silence so deep it starts talking back. Men talk to themselves, to God, to the ghosts of the people they once were. And others. They just stop talking altogether. Leavenworth doesn't take your body first. It takes your mind. Behind those high walls, Leavenworth operated like a well-oiled machine. Prisoners became laborious, building furniture, sewing uniforms, and making license plates. These products left the prison gates, but the men never did. It was a system that looked like order but thrived on absolute control. Every shift had a purpose, not just to keep men busy, but to remind them who held all the power. The constant clang of metal, the hum of machinery, the shouted orders, it was industrial discipline turned into psychological warfare. You either worked, or you paid the price. Refuse an order, and you'd lose your privileges. Mail from home, visits from loved ones, even your right to breathe fresh air in the yard. For some, the work was a strange form of survival. It provided a structure to cling to when everything else had been stripped away. But for others, it was just another form of enslavement, punishment disguised as productivity. Leavenworth became more than just a prison. It was an economy built on the backs of the condemned. In Leavenworth's ecosystem, the guards weren't just authority figures. They were gods ruling a world that never slept. Some governed with an iron fist, using fear as their primary tool. Others were just trying to survive their own version of the sentence. 8 hours a day in a place designed to break people. Rumors of brutality have haunted these halls for decades. Beatings that never made it into reports. Inmates who vanished into solitary confinement and came back changed, quieter, slower, their eyes hollowed out. But Leavenworth left scars on everyone. Some guards couldn't sleep without hearing the echo of cell doors slamming in their dreams. Some turned to alcohol to numb the constant tension. Others just stopped feeling anything at all. A retired officer once admitted, "Leavenworth doesn't care if you wear blue or grey. It'll eat you either way." That's the truth no one ever wants to talk about. Both sides were trapped inside those walls, caught in the same brutal cycle. By the late 20th century, Leavenworth had changed on the surface, but its soul remained the same. A new, modern high-security complex was built nearby, and the old stone fortress was downgraded to a medium-security facility. But the name Leavenworth still carried a weight heavier than any chain. It became a symbol, a dark monument to how far the justice system was willing to go, a history buried behind bars. Inmates from every generation, from Prohibition-era gangsters to modern-day criminals, have shared the same view from their cell window, a wall. And behind that wall, a life that would never be theirs again. Today, Leavenworth still stands, its stone weathered but unbroken, stained by a century of despair and defiance. And though modern cells have fluorescent lights instead of old gas lanterns, the darkness inside hasn't changed. Because Leavenworth was never just a prison. It was, and still is, a reflection of what society does with the people it can't bring itself to forgive. Have you ever wondered what happens when the official records stop and the real stories begin? Leavenworth isn't just a prison. It's a living, breathing beast with a history darker than any file will ever tell you. For over a century, its walls have held more than just inmates. They've held secrets. In every corner of Leavenworth, there are stories whispered between cell bars, told only when the lights went out. Former inmates speak of hidden violence, coded messages, and unspoken rules that governed life long after the wardens thought they had control. One man, known only as Reed, spent 22 years inside. He said, "Leavenworth teaches you two things, how to wait and how to disappear." He described nights where screams echoed through the cell blocks, but no one ever came to help. Fights started over a cigarette or a stare, and ended with someone never waking up. There were guards who looked the other way, and inmates who learned to do their dirt in silence. You didn't ask questions. You didn't point fingers. You just hoped the next knock wasn't on your cell door. By the 1990s, Leavenworth changed, but not for the better. The gangs that once fought in the yard had grown organized and powerful. Groups like the Aryan Brotherhood and the Mexican Mafia turned the prison into a battleground of alliances and revenge. Drugs made their way in through clever networks, smuggled by corrupt staff or passed during family visits. Money flowed where blood once did, and control shifted from the guards to the men who ran the tiers from the shadows. An anonymous source in 2005 described it perfectly. Leavenworth isn't a prison anymore. It's a kingdom with no king, just soldiers trying not to die. Survival depended on who you stood next to when the lights went out. Hidden beneath the newer wings of the prison lies something few talk about, the old cell block. It's abandoned now, a relic of another time. Crumbling concrete, rusted bars, the air thick with dust and memory. But some say it's still alive. Guards refuse to walk through it alone, and inmates used to whisper that if you listen closely, you could hear chains rattle at night. Old records show dozens of men died down there, from beatings, starvation, or sickness. It became a prison beneath a prison, a place of ultimate punishment. Though it's sealed off today, parts of the underground corridor still connect to newer sections, a living reminder that Leavenworth doesn't erase its past, it just hides it under another layer of concrete. For the men who made it out, who walked through those iron gates back into the free world, Leavenworth never truly let them go. They carried it with them in the way they moved, the way they talked, the way they couldn't sleep unless a door was locked. Freedom didn't feel like freedom anymore. It felt unfamiliar. One former inmate said, "You think you're leaving prison, but prison doesn't leave you. It just changes shape." Many reoffended, not because they wanted to, but because life outside had no rhythm they recognized. The world had changed, but Leavenworth stayed the same, frozen in time inside their minds. That's the hidden sentence no one talks about, the one that starts after the gates open. Then, in 2018, a set of sealed files was discovered in the basement of Leavenworth's administrative wing. Yellowed paper, faded ink, forgotten by time, or hidden on purpose. Inside were reports from as far back as the 1920s, including a list titled Unrecorded Incidents. It documented dozens of inmate deaths never officially reported, listed as illness, accident, or simply transfer. But one page stood out, a letter from a guard in 1932. It read, "There are things happening in the lower cell blocks that I can no longer be part of. If anyone finds this, tell the truth. Leavenworth eats men alive, and no one ever leaves clean." Less than a year after those files surfaced, history repeated itself. In 2019, leaked footage revealed modern corruption, guards trading favors, smuggling contraband, and allowing inmates to control entire sections of the facility. It mirrored the very reports from nearly a century earlier. The faces had changed, the technology had evolved, but the power, the way it moved and corrupted, stayed the same. For over 100 years, Leavenworth didn't just confine men. It created them, molding them into survivors, monsters, or ghosts of who they used to be. And even now, behind the newer paint and digital locks, the old Leavenworth still breathes, its stones still humming with the voices of those who never left. Step inside the walls of Leavenworth, and you'll feel it. It's not just the chill of old stone or the echoing silence of the long corridors. It's something else, a feeling that the place itself remembers. Every inmate who has ever walked these halls leaves a piece of their story behind. And when they're gone, the prison keeps the echo. To an outsider, it might just be another penitentiary, old, outdated, and slated for replacement. But to anyone who spent time within its grasp, Leavenworth is alive. A century of anger, desperation, and regret doesn't just vanish into thin air. It seeps into the very foundation. It lingers in the phantom footsteps you hear at night, in the sudden cold that runs down your spine in an empty cell block, and in the profound silence that falls after lights out. Leavenworth isn't just a symbol of a broken system. It is the system. A machine built to contain men, but fueled by their suffering. And that's the real reason it's still standing. Not because its walls are so strong, but because the stories it holds simply refuse to die. Walk through Leavenworth today, and the weight of that history is suffocating. You'll see modern security cameras bolted to century-old walls, digital scanners humming at gates that once clanged shut on some of America's most infamous criminals. The technology is new, but the heartbeat of the prison is the same, slow, heavy, and haunted. Most of the new generation of inmates don't know the full history of where they are. To them, Leavenworth is just another stop, another number in the system. But if you listen closely, the walls still whisper. They tell stories of Al Capone, of Machine Gun Kelly, of the men who built this very prison with their own blooded hands. When a cell door slams shut today, it makes the exact same sound it did in 1903. The same echo, carrying the same timeless message. You're not leaving until the prison says you can. But here's the real twist, the true horror of Leavenworth. It isn't buried in the past. It's the chilling realization that the lessons this place was meant to teach us were never learned. The overcrowding, the tension, the suffocating silence, it's all still here, just with new faces and new numbers attached. And maybe that's the darkest secret of all. Leavenworth was never just built to hold criminals. It was built to hold a mirror up to America, reflecting every failure, every injustice, and every hard truth we'd rather ignore. The moment you pass through those gates, you understand something terrifying. These walls aren't just designed to keep people in. They're built to keep history from getting out. Leavenworth has stood for over a century, weathering wars, reforms, and countless promises that things would finally change. But it didn't survive by evolving. It survived because we, as a society, never stopped needing a place like it. Every brick, every barred window, every forgotten soul buried within these walls is a stark reminder that power and punishment have always been intertwined. One day, the old prison might finally close its doors for good. It might become a museum, a grim monument to a bygone era. But even then, its shadow will stretch long and dark across the Kansas plains, a permanent reminder of the line between freedom and confinement. Because Leavenworth isn't just a prison. It's a warning. It's a monument to what happens when we forget the humanity of those we lock away. And as long as it stands, the story of America's oldest, most notorious federal penitentiary will never truly be over. Thanks for watching. If this story resonated with you, consider liking this video and subscribing for more deep dives into forgotten history. Stay curious.